Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Fungus can be a big problem in the garden. Luckily, there are fungicides, and today we're going to talk about the most common ones. Also, monarch butterflies are heading south, and there is a way you can help study them. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Mike Dennison. Mr. D is a retired UT Extension agent, and Mary Schmidt will be joining me later. Mr. D, always good to have you here.
Glad to be here, glad to be here.
All right, so we're going to talk about common fungicides. So my question to you is going to be this: why do we need fungicides?
Fungicides are very important to primarily prevent diseases.
Okay.
With insects, you can see an insect problem and you can spray it with insecticides and kill the insect. With fungal disease, leaf spot diseases especially, things like that, you want to try to prevent those from occurring. And if you already have the spots on the leaf, there is no fungicide on the market that will take those spots off.
That's good.
But you can hopefully prevent it from spreading.
All right, so let's talk about some of the different common fungicides.
One of the most common one is chlorothalonil. And let me, at this point, let me say the trade name really is not as important as the common name.
Good.
The common name is chlorothalonil. It is probably sold under several different trade names.
Okay. And what do you mean by trade names?
A trade name, I'm going to give you an example.
Okay.
Daconil is a trade name for chlorothalonil, but chlorothalonil is in a lot of fungicides because the patent has run out on most of these fungicides. Most of these fungicides have been around quite a while.
Right.
And but chlorothalonil and mancozeb are two very, very common fungicides that you will often see recommended for vegetable diseases. Tomato blight, early blight, some of the leaf spot and rust and things like that that affect vegetables. Captan is probably the most widely recommended fungicide for fruit trees. Brown rot on peaches, black rot on apples, fly speck, a lot of the common diseases on apples. Captan is the most common ingredient in home orchard sprays. Sulfur is a biological fungicide that is also commonly recommended for fruits, a lot of the fruit diseases, and I'm talking about the leaf spots, brown rot, and even black rot on grapes and things like that.
Okay.
When you get into the roses and some of the ornamentals, myclobutanil, propiconazole, tebuconazole, some of these are systemic type.
Okay. And do explain what systemic means.
Systemic means that it is absorbed somewhat by the plant. Okay. There are locally systemic fungicides that are absorbed by the leaf, and it may move a little bit into the leaf.
Right.
There's some that are a little bit more systemic that are absorbed into the leaf and may go right to the end of a shoot or the end of a growing point a little bit. And then there are some newer the fungicides that are out there that are totally systemic, and they'll move throughout the plant all the way to the roots. And those are some of the brand new ones. And they will give you about another week's control, from 7 to 21 days control if rain doesn't wash them off. The contact fungicides are 7 to 14 days. So you get an extra week if you go with some of the systemics. And some of the systemics have a little bit of kickback activity, a little bit of curative problem. You can have an infection that is less than 72 hours, and if that fungicide is absorbed into the tissue, it can actually help control that disease.
How about
so that's in some of the ornamentals. You're really into aesthetics. You want things to really look good, and that's why most of the time you see one of the systemics recommended for those kind of problems. Copper is another fungicide, copper sulfate, that will also has some bacterial activity. in the pecan business, copper fungicides are very, very common to control the diseases on pecan trees. Some of the newer ones, and these are commonly used in turf grass, strobilurins, azoxystrobin, pyroclostrobin, those type of fungicides. They'll control brown spot, brown patch, and dollar spot in turf grass, and they are also systemic, and that's the golf course is very important to keep those diseases in your home lawn also.
Right. That's right.
Those are the most common ones. Some of the botanicals that are out there for folks that are organically minded, sulfur is one of those that I've already mentioned, but neem has some fungicidal activities. Clove and rosemary oils do too. There's a biological out there. We're all familiar with Bacillus thuringiensis, which controls caterpillars, but there's a Bacillus subtilis that has some antifungal activity.
Really?
So
never heard of that. Okay.
Yeah, it sure is.
Oh, wow.
And that's pretty much it on the most common fungicides that are out there. I know that on the agricultural end, new ones come out all the time.
Okay.
And it's hard to keep up with them. And there are some of the systemics that, at one time, when you said systemic activity with a fungicide, you'd kind of say, oh, I don't know about that.
So if you're a homeowner, how do you determine which fungicide you need to use?
The label.
Okay.
Read the label. A lot of these fungicides will control powdery mildew, downy mildew, leaf spots, rust, and things like that. And you'll see that on a lot of the fungicide labels. It's probably a good idea to use more than one class of fungicides because fungal diseases can build up a resistance to fungicides if you use the same fungicide all the time.
Right.
That's why, and there are fungicides out there that have more than one chemical in them. There are actually two fungicides together. That also combats resistance. They're a little bit more expensive, but they'll control more diseases, and it combats the resistance thing. But read the label. Try to identify the disease that you have.
Yes.
Or I know on my fruit trees what kind of diseases that I'm going to get. And so I make sure that I use a fungicide that will prevent those diseases from occurring. The thing about fungicides is you can spray during bloom, and sometimes it's necessary to spray when the plants are blooming because there are fungal organisms that can get into the blooms, and actually, if you take the bloom out, you've lost your fruit.
Yes,
and the fungicides have no insecticidal activity, so they will not hurt the honeybees, pollinating insects. But know what disease that they're trying to take care of.
I think that's the key, really.
And then you make sure that the fungicide you choose has that disease on the label.
Right. Another question. So is it best to use a liquid fungicide?
I'm not aware of, there are some powdered fungicides. I don't think it makes any difference. I know Benamil used to be a powdered fungicide. But with the work that I do, have done in the past, almost all of the fungicides I've used have been liquid. Personally, liquids are easier to get into solution, but the powdered also are pretty easy to get into solution simply by slurrying them, pouring them from one container to another. Make sure that they're really in solution real good and really, liquefied before you put them in your spray tank. That's very important. And then continue with any of them, shake the tanks up, keep them agitated. Even the liquid ones will fall out if you don't do a really good job of keeping the tanks agitated.
Okay. Yeah. So the key is read and follow the label.
Read and follow the label. Right. Especially one thing you need to be aware of is most of these fungicides have withdrawal periods before harvest, so make sure that you stop spraying well before the harvest.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. D. We appreciate that good information. All right.
We have some issues with our cucumber here. It looks like it's got quite an infestation of squash bugs. See, there's one right there. I see one there. I see one right here on the back side of this leaf. This is a cucumber. Just goes to show that just because it's called a squash bug doesn't mean it won't attack other plants. To control squash bugs, you need a pretty hot insecticide. The synthetic pyrethroids are probably the best way to go. Esfenvalerate or lambda-cyhalothrin, or one of the synthetic pyrethroids will do the job on these squash bugs. And I consider that pulling out the big guns. And with as heavy an infestation as you have, you need to do that. The squash bugs have piercing, sucking mouth parts, and so they're feeding on the stems, and they'll feed on the fruit. Insects with piercing, sucking mouth parts can also spread diseases, viruses, and things like that, which may have some of that going on in this cucumber plant. I would get rid of them as soon as possible.
All right, Mary. So let's talk a little bit about the migration of monarchs.
Okay. So monarchs are the butterfly that I brought along today. And monarchs are really unique because they have a migration. And most butterflies don't migrate. But the monarch butterfly is going to migrate all the way down to Mexico. But it's not every monarch that we see. It's only the 4th generation in the year, which peaks around late September, early October. And that's the generation that's going to migrate all the way down to Mexico.
Okay. It's a long journey all the way down to Mexico.
It is. It can be up to about 3,000 miles.
Okay. And this is the 4th generation.
That's right.
Okay.
So all the other generations are going to be laying eggs, and once those become caterpillars, then butterflies, they're going to be moving further north up into just past the Canadian border until that last generation that migrates south.
Okay. Now, what are some of the challenges? Because that's a long journey. So there
It
has to
is.
be some challenges along the way.
Lots of challenges. Some of them are going to be not having fueling points. So just like we're driving our car and we need to stop at a gas station,
Right.
butterflies have to find some really good food sources.
Okay.
So things that we can do, plant late blooming nectar sources.
Okay.
Also weather. One bad storm along that journey can really affect them. And really loss of habitat is one of the biggest things affecting them today.
Okay, loss of habitat. Okay, so what do we need to be planting for them then, specifically?
So some of my favorites to plant right now, and so you want things that are going to be blooming in late September and maybe even into mid-October.
Okay.
Some of the ones I brought around, goldenrod is a good one, blazing star. The ones I have in here are late through-awort and frostweed. Frostweed is sometimes called white wing stem too.
Okay.
If you look on the stem, it's got little wings on it. So those are a couple that I brought along with me. Mistflower is another really good one too.
All right. Now let's talk about citizen science projects. What is that all about?
Okay, citizen science is kind of what it says. Citizen science is science that anybody can be part of.
Okay.
And so we're going to talk a little bit more about monarch citizen science, but citizen science is a kind of across the spectrum, everything from just reporting if you felt an earthquake to recording the first time you saw a hummingbird in the spring, or when milkweed is emerging or something like that. So lots of different projects that anyone can be involved in.
Okay. And this is something that folks have to call Lichterman Nature Center to learn more about, or?
Not at all. There, if you just go on the internet and you look up citizen science, or if you're specifically interested in citizen science on birds or butterflies or plants, just look that up, and there are thousands of different projects that you can participate in.
Oh, good deal. I know Mr. D mentioned earlier that you actually saw a monarch butterfly when you were fishing.
I have. I've lived a number of years down in Mobile, and I've seen them on the beach many times, and I've been out of fishing far enough out, out of sight of land, and I had monarch butterflies land on my boat. And I don't know whether they're trying to take a shortcut or whether they got a north wind blew them out and they're kind of going along the coast or what. But it's sometimes quite a few. You see quite a few out like that. It's kind of strange.
Yeah, so sometimes, most of the time they're going to migrate over land, but like you said, a wind can blow them out to sea, and they probably saw your boat. And were like,
good place to rest.
Exactly.
Wow. So you're right. Weather does play a role.
Absolutely.
In migration. So just a little wind could just move them off course just a little bit. How about that?
Yeah, you think they weigh a little bit less than a paper clip. So.
And I guess they can land on driftwood and rest.
Okay.
And now I don't know what they would find to eat out there.
Right, not much.
Not a whole lot, I wouldn't think, but they don't have to have a big something to land on.
Right, and just kind of hang out for a little bit.
No.
All right, Mary, we were looking forward to going outside and tagging monarchs, right?
It's going to be great.
All right. All right, Mary, let's tag some monarchs.
Yes.
So first, what type of equipment do we need?
Okay, so if you're interested in tagging monarchs, the first thing you need to do is order the tags.
Okay.
And so you'll go to monarchwatch.org. Order your tags, you'll get some tags, and these are what we're actually going to put on the butterflies here in just a minute.
Okay, those are real small tags.
They are really small, and what's great about them is they're not going to affect the butterfly's flight pattern or anything like that. So they've done studies, really lightweight, special weather proof glue, stuff like that.
Okay.
Really important too, you want to get a toothpick because this is how we're going to apply the tag to the butterfly wing. You're going to need your data form, which you've got there,
which I have.
and a pencil.
Which I have.
And then to catch the butterflies, you want to get a butterfly net. And when you're looking at a butterfly net, you want something with a deep pocket. So when you're going over the butterfly, you're not going to damage your plant, and you're not going to damage the butterfly.
Makes sense. Okay.
Okay?
And what's on the tags, by the way?
Oh, great question.
Because I see some writing.
So it's pretty small, but on the tags, there's going to be an email address, the name of the program, which is Monarch Watch, a phone number, and a unique code. It's 3 letters and 3 numbers. Okay. So each individual butterfly that's tagged can be tracked from where it was tagged to where it was recovered. Okay. So a unique combination for each butterfly that we're going to tag.
It's pretty neat.
Okay, so should we get to tagging?
Hey, let's get to tagging.
All right. So I brought along some monarch butterflies with me, and tagging only happens on the southern migration in this area, like we talked about, mid-September into the beginning of October. So if you see monarchs other times of the year, they're great to watch, but we're not going to be tagging them. Okay?
Good to watch.
Okay, so let me reach in here and grab one out.
And you've been doing this for a while, right?
I have.
I see you just go right in and just get them.
So not much hesitation. So what we're looking for is we're going to tag in one specific area. We're going to tag on this mitten-shaped cell, okay? So I'm going to read you a number. This is going to be our tag number. It's WCM 877.
Got it.
Okay, so then the first thing we're going to do is get this tag off and get it on the butterfly in case I accidentally let it go. And then I'm going to give you a little bit more information about it. Okay, so we've got the tag on there. And then this is a male. So you can see the two black patches there. That only the males have. Okay, so we've got a male. And these are ones that we actually raised at Lichterman. So you can put an R for reared. If you're collecting them in the wild, you just put a W. And then our tagging location is going to be Cordova, right outside the studios.
All right, got it.
And that's it. So we put our hand out, give this guy just a second, and there he goes.
There he goes. So there they go. How about that?
Yeah, good luck. Hope they make it to Mexico.
I hope they make it too. So what happens when somebody finds them again? Can you go through that process again?
So most of the time people find them, they have no idea what that little tag is. So luckily the tags have contact information, email, phone number, so people, if they do find them, can call or email with that unique code, and then hopefully we'll know that some of our butterflies either made it maybe to the Texas coast, but we're hoping we don't hear from them for a couple months and they make it all the way down to Mexico.
Okay, and how long again do you think that process takes for them to migrate down that way?
Well, they're going to fly maybe 30 to 50 miles a day, so it could take a month and a half, 2 months to get down there, and then they'll spend their winter kind of all huddled together on this one type of fir tree down in the mountains of central Mexico, and then hopefully they survive the winter down there too, and then make the trip back to the Texas coast starting like in March.
I hope they make it.
I hope so too. I hope we get some recoveries. That'd be great.
That would be great. Thanks again, Mary. Definitely appreciate that demonstration.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Sweet potato vines are pretty easy to propagate. So what I'm going to do here, grab a couple of these vines here, cut in between a couple of leaves. All right, we'll get one more. So I'm going to take a couple of these bottom leaves off here. We're going to stick them in this water. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna stick this in a well-lit room, and we're gonna see if it's gonna produce fruits for us. So here are the sweet potato vines that I cut today. Here are some sweet potato vines that were cut 3 weeks ago. And as you can see, they're rooted pretty well. So what I'm gonna do here is just grab one of these. Look at the roots, right? Nice white fibrous roots, okay? I'm gonna cut this part off. Yeah, right there. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and plant this in this nice soil mix that we have here. So now this is potted up. What we're gonna do is let it stay here for about a couple of weeks. We'll take it outside. We'll put it in shady conditions first, right? Because we don't want to stress it out. We want it to get acclimated to the environment. And then maybe a week or so after that, we'll put it in the condition that it loves, which is full sun. All right, Mr. D, here's our Q&A segment. You ready?
I am ready.
Man, these are some great questions, right?
They are. There's some good ones.
All right, here's our first viewer email. Which herbicide should I use for grassy weeds around my fruit trees? And this is Tyler from Northwest Mississippi. So yeah, you probably know something about killing some grass around fruit trees, I'm sure.
I do. Around my fruit trees, I use cefoxidim.
Oh, good old post, right?
Yep.
All right, how about that?
I am afraid of Roundup. Roundup does strange things to fruit, to a lot of fruits, especially grapes and peaches and things like that. Roundup is labeled to be used around fruit trees, but and it will get more, it'll get the broadleaves and the grasses.
Sure.
But the question is about grass.
Grass.
If grass is your problem, cefoxidim will not hurt the fruit trees at all, and it'll take the grasses out.
Right. So what if there's some broadleaf weeds, around your fruit trees? How about that one?
Are you commercial or homeowner?
Okay, yeah.
If you're commercial, paraquat, gramoxone.
Yeah, okay.
It's labeled for use on fruit trees, and it'll take out grasses and broadleaf.
Okay.
Do not use 2,4-D and dicamba, because that also can create problems
strange things
on fruit trees.
to the fruits.
And that's what common broadleaf material.
Right. It sure is.
So I pretty much control the grasses, and the broadleafs, mostly dollar weed. It's a vine. I pull them out. I mechanically pull them out, and pretty much. Okay. I live with the broadleaves. I don't have many broadleaves.
Okay, so you live with the broadleaves, pull them out. So thank you, Tyler. We appreciate that question. Read and follow the label, okay?
Yep.
Here's our next viewer email. My corn has grown well, but the lower leaves are all yellow spotted. Is this about the weather we've had this summer, or is it a fungus or a disease? And this is Kathy from Snow Hill, Maryland. She says it is not affecting the ears, but the farmer's field across the street has the same problem.
Very, very, very common. Gray leaf spot.
Gray leaf spot,
Gray leaf spot on corn. It's don't need to worry about it. The key word there is it doesn't affect the ears.
That's right.
So it's a kind of a late season, mid to late season disease that very, very common, pops out on corn, and it's just one of those things that we live with.
Yeah. And like she said, it's on the lower leaves.
It really doesn't hurt the yield. Really doesn't hurt the yields much.
So don't have to worry about any type of spray, anything like that, right?
I would not.
Would not worry about it. So thank you for that question, Miss Kathy. All right, and enjoy that corn. All right.
No.
Here's our next viewer email. I am trying to start a plum tree from a seed. What do I need to do for success? And this is Ken. All right, Miss D. All right.
Okay, that depends.
All right, it depends.
Do you want a tree, or do you want fruit?
Okay.
You can plant one from seed. If you do plant from seed, and we'll go with that angle first.
Okay, let's do
that. If you do go from seed, you need to make sure you stratify the seed. It needs to be refrigerated for 6 to 8 weeks in peat moss or a moist container in the refrigerator, and then you plant it. It will sprout and it will grow.
It will grow.
And it will not be what the plum looked like that you ate, because most plums are cross-pollinated.
Right.
That means it will be like the pecan I mentioned earlier. It will be half mama and half daddy. And if mama's good and daddy's bad, then you
got a problem.
You got a problem. So it's kind of a gamble, because it's going to take 3 to 5 years for you to figure that out. That's how long it takes for a plum to bear.
Okay.
3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years. Wow.
If you want fruit, I suggest you purchase a budded 2-year-old little plum tree, and 2 of them.
Okay.
Because you want to cross-pollinate.
That's right.
And you plant them and you take care of them. They're like peaches. They have brown rot. They have the same diseases as peaches. They are going to require a lot of spraying.
Wow. Spray schedule.
You know, you may want to consider going to your local commercial plum grower and buy them. It's going to be a lot cheaper.
It's going to be a lot cheaper?
It's going to be a lot cheaper.
Might taste a little better too.
No.
How about that? So there you have it, Mr. Ken. And something else, you know, about those seeds that I learned in school, right? If you want to know if those plum seeds are viable, put them in some water. If they float, throw it away. If they sink to the bottom, they're viable.
Huh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that on the seeds.
I was paying attention in class that day.
Learn something new every day.
Learn something new, right? So thank you, Ken. We appreciate that question.
You
right?
can teach an old dog new tricks.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Thank you, Mr. D. That was fun, man, as always. Thank you much. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is questions@familyplotgarden.com. And the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee, 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. If you want to see how to mix and apply fungicide or learn how to build a butterfly garden, head on over to familyplotgarden.com. We have those videos and hundreds more. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.